Hello, I'm Natred. You may have seen some of the fight reviews that I've recorded so far, and somebody pointed out here today that it might be helpful to kind of explain who I am, where I come from, my background in fighting. Because, yeah, you definitely don't want to be getting your advice from just anybody. And I tried to say in some of these videos, to make it clear, I'm absolutely not the best fighter. I wouldn't even say that I'm like in the top 10 percentile of fighters out there, 20 percentile maybe. Um, and it always feels weird for me to talk about myself. Me and my ego battle with each other often enough that it feels strange to kind of talk about, like, yes, I'm this person and I did this fighting thing and I was kind of okay sometimes. But, you know, I do kind of enjoy being able to talk about myself. So let's take advantage of that. My name's Nathan Trim. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I fight under the name Natred. I started fighting in 2003 under a homegrown LARP called Melee. Melee was a no magic LARP with a multi-point armor system, so it was pretty grappling heavy. If you had a lot of people in armor, or if you had somebody in armor and a lot of people without armor, they could stack up to 4 points. And so it ended up a lot of dog piles on armored folks. Melee primarily revolved around the faction battle system, so you could start a faction if you had a minimum number of people and a banner. The exact requirements changed every season or so. And at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 3 o'clock, they would have these open field single life unit battles, and whatever faction wins gets a point, and then at the end of the quarter you get an award, and at the end of the year you get a bigger award for being a faction with the most faction points. And it kind of bred this A, pretty large practice, and B, pretty competitive practice. Large because you had people who would show up every week because there was extra incentive to be there and fight for your team and to fight harder for your team. People took it pretty seriously. People got pretty toxically into this. Um, and competitive because the very like nature of the game is more like a sport than a LARP, because it's not so much about telling a story. It's not so much about having a setting or a scenario, or like a really detailed story-driven scenario. That stuff did happen, and I'll talk about that in a second. But it was primarily treated more like a competitive sports league. If there was role play, if there was story building and lore building, it was usually done off the field and online. There would be in persona pages for Facebook. There used to be a Melee forum that had, I believe, in persona page, and people would craft, really intricate backstories. But when it came to the actual fighting and combat, I'd like to say that it's probably several degrees more competitive than your average practice throughout the states. I haven't been to every practice throughout the states, but I've been to a lot. I've been to a few around the Midwest, and just talking to people about what we had at Melee. It was a different breed, and not saying it was strictly better. It definitely had a bunch of it. It was kind of unique. Had a unique set of good things and bad things. More competitive, more emphasis on skilling up, and a lot more emphasis on small unit combat, teamwork, that kind of thing. Uh, that I still think to this day that old Melee vets who are still fighting are going to be some of the best teammates in large unit combat, just because 3 times a week you would practice this in a pretty competitive light. You would take it pretty seriously. So while I'm talking, I've kind of pulled up a slideshow of photos that I want to go through, and I'll kind of just talk about things as I go along. They're in no real particular order. So I started fighting in 2003 at Melee. This is me. I'm 31 now. This is somewhere in my mid 20s, I think. This is a very ceremonial Melee weapon, but they weren't cloth covered. They were covered in layers of tape, so they hit a lot harder. Um, they felt like getting hit with paintballs. I, in fact, actually have a super crappy Melee weapon that's just still sitting around my house for some reason. And you can see it almost has more of the profile and dimensions of like an SCA stick. and it has this big basket on it because hand shots counted as your arm there. And I literally just picked this up, and I was like, earlier, and I was like, oh yeah, the melee weapon. And I hit myself in the shin with it, lightly, and now I have a bruise. Because it's hard to demonstrate on camera, but this has very little give to it. Like, this is me totally relaxed. This is me crunching it as hard as I can with my fingers. It's very dense. People would pressure tape them. And because of that, the fact that it hurt and the hand shots, I believe it led to a more defensive style of fighting. It led to a more unique style of fighting. People would, even if they had baskets, they'd kind of just train themselves to keep their hands inside of their shields instead of outside, and they wouldn't use their sword and their fist to ever really try to like block shots. It also made high crossing more popular than it already is because now the hand's legal strike zone, and your high cross sometimes lands in that area. So this is me at a large melee gathering. I just have this photo pulled because I look good in it. But I did melee only, I want to say, for about 7 or 8 years. I went to maybe one Amp Guard event in that time, and my memory is horrific, so I may be getting some dates wrong. But I did melee for quite a while. Melee was really xenophobic when it came to other foam fighting games. We thought that if it was covered in cloth, it was for pussies. And we had that feeling towards the local Amp Guard park for quite a while. And I believe there was some intergroup drama that I wasn't really aware of, because again, I was mostly focused on the fighting. I wasn't really. I just basically towed the party line and thought Amp Guard sucked. Didn't know Dagger Hero or Bella Garth existed. Went to my first Amp Guard event. A couple of folks, Fenton and a dude named John Watkins, who went by Zero. Another guy. They took me down to Tanglewood Forest. I believe it's south of Dallas. The site was cool. People sucked. There were some good fighters there. It wasn't worth the shitty culture, and I thought it was kind of like an affirming thing for me that I didn't really like doing Amp Guard. I got to fight my first warlord. Got to fight. I don't even know if he was a warlord then. He probably was, but Monkey. Had a chance to fight Monkey. He showed me some stuff. I'd been fighting for, I want to say, anywhere from 7 to 10 years, somewhere in that area, and thought that I was getting to the point where I kind of knew my stuff. I was notably like above average at my local park, and had gone through phases of thinking that I was good, then getting humbled, and thinking that I was good, and getting humbled, and knowing how that felt. Very humbling experience fighting my first Sword Knight Warlord for the first time. Came back to Tulsa, went back to Melee, did that for a few more years. Did okay. I won our big Champions tournament that's held once a year, 1 year. Qualified for it pretty frequently, and fighting Sword and Shield. I've been on a few Faction of the Years, both in a just regular fighting and also like a leadership capacity. I think that's one of my biggest strengths as a fighter, and it's frustrating I don't get the like stage to show it that often, is like actual field combat and field maneuvering, and I feel like that's the like last respite of every shitty fighter. Is trying to tell you like, oh yeah, I'm good on the field and I understand strategy and tactics. I have a whole video series I might do about foam fighting tactics at one point, and I think that I actually have something of value to say about that, because it was my interest, my specific interest in the umbrella of foam fighting for so long, where it's not for a lot of people, or if it is, they don't have big fucking local practices. We'll get into some photos talking about how big Melee's practices used to be, but it's not on the scale of a 10 to 15 person, 20 person regular practice. So anyway, Dagger here. This is me and my buddy Manly at my first Dagger here event, and this is Angus in the background. Angus and Manly are actually still fighting to this day. They're both real solid. You can find footage of them. I haven't narrated it, it's just raw, and I'm not going to narrate it because the camera quality and the shaking sucks, but there's footage of these two guys fighting. They're both really solid. This is me at my first DAG event. There were a couple of guys named Chongo and Drode who came to Tulsa, and they started coming out to Melee. They heard about it at a local card shop. They started coming out, and they did Dagahir and Belagarth, or Dagahir, and it was the first time that I had ever seen cloth-covered weapons that weren't like feather light, you know. And back when I was xenophobic and amp guards for pussies, one of my big things was the weapon weight and the hit calibration and lack of grappling, things like that. And to have these two guys come out from I believe St. Louis, I think it's St. Louis, DAG, and come out and just be like as rough and tumble as all the melee guys were, as willing to grapple. There wasn't this like pretentious air about them that I feel like I'm giving off right now talking about melee, and also the local Amp Guard group had at the time. And they were just cool guys, and they kind of they fit in really well to the culture at the park, and they got a few of us interested, a couple of my friends interested in cross gaming, going into Belagarth or Dagahir events. I do Bell now, Dagahir events, and a little while after that, I went to my first in-state Dagahir event, and then shortly thereafter went to my first out-of-state Dagahir event. This is a photo probably from my second or third out-of-state Dag event. I didn't pull anything from the first because it doesn't paint me in a flattering light. And then boom, I was gone. I was fully off into cross gaming world. This is me, same event, getting rocked in the face at Dag. I was off into the cross gaming world and kind of never looked back. I've done and volunteered and like done administrative stuff in the past at Melee, and it was really killing my enjoyment of the game. So I stopped doing anything except like the volunteering that I found fun and rewarding, and just focused on fighting. Really trying to go to Amp Guard or DAG or Melee, trying to just find the best fighters to grind against. And I feel this is one of the things that may have been holding my skill level back the most as a fighting in my fighting development, is the lack of ability to travel. I've been pretty much a broke kid for like my whole life. I've had to recover from a bout of homelessness, and I'm just now starting to get to the point where I might be able to build the infrastructure in my life to travel more and fight some of the best fighters in the States. This is me fighting against a dude named Russell, who's now running a DAG group here in town, or one of the guys adminning a DAG group and doing really well. Him and I go way back, friends for a long time, frenemies for a long time, competitors for a long time. And you'll see some of these old Melee photos where it's like, I have a Melee shield. This is my old giant Melee shield. I have a Melee shield. I used this when I was the line sergeant for a heavy infantry team. This big shield, but I have a DAG sword, and Russell has a DAG shield, but a Melee sword, because this is around the time where a lot of cross gaming was going on. A very small number of us started going to out-of-state DAG events, coming back and being like, you people have to go, you have to cross game, you have to get out of your own little echo chamber and like go meet other people, have a good time, and fight new people. See if you're just really good fighting other people from your same dojo, or if your school of kung fu is weaker than other schools. Are you good enough at your own school that you can beat somebody else who's good at their school? Or are you just good at fighting the same like 30 characters? Like, yeah, I'm good at this fighting game, but I only fight the same 45 AI characters. I don't ever go play online. Like, you don't really know how good you are until you travel. And also you learn great lessons about community and team building and leadership and administrativeship, and just total net positive. This is really small, but this is me with my Melee kit at a snowy practice. I have catcher's guards on, probably the most popular item of Melee armor, because these counted for 2 points out there, and boy, they're comfy to go to the ground on. My big boy shield, I look even thicker than normal in this because I have my armor on, then a fur over it, and a luchador mask because it was cold outside. This is an incredibly rare photo of me using a 10-foot spear. I believe this was at a point in a faction battle where all of our spearmen on this little area had died, and I just saw a guy walking off with a spear, and grabbed it. Because in Melee, the only like bigger weapons deal extra damage to armor, And the only way to really neutralize people who are walking around with 4 points of armor is to blast them with a 10-foot spear that does 4 points of damage. You know, like this flail is a 1 point weapon, this mace is a 1 point weapon, this is a 4 point banger. And this is probably the last time I actually tried to fight spear, and I threw about 45 shots that hit nothing. Again, this is Manly here, looking so handsome. My buddy Nerdamoose here in the background. Old melee photos. Sometimes you get your nose broken. It's cool. It's fine. I actually, I was doing a round robin, and I beat, this was out at the melee group in Okmulgee. That's now a hybrid melee dad group, I believe. Okmulgee is like an hour, 45 minutes, an hour outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. We were doing a round robin. I had just about gone all the way around. I'm not sure, if you know how round robins can actually, finish or how your rule set works, but, we were doing it to where I think there were about 10 to 12 people in the circle, and the game went on until somebody went around the entire circle, and I was, 2 or 3 people from the end, and a fighter, I believe, named Blue just cracked me right in the nose. And of course, everyone's very nice. They're like, oh, you need to sit down, you need to sit down. And my face is just numb. And I'm like, no, I think it's all right. I think I'm fine. I'm about to win, right? I'm winning. Why would I stop? And yeah, I ended up winning it. Don't do that. Don't be an idiot. That shit's what fucked my knees up, being an idiot. Alright, talking about melee being a big practice. This is one of the bigger melee practices ever on record. This is a 100+ person practice. This is a single fight going on, and you can see that it's taking place in multiple areas on this field. You have a faction engagement happening here. You have a faction engagement happening here. And you have a faction engagement happening here. These are all melee fighters, even over here off the screen. These are individual units, individual factions maneuvering to engage each other. An actual, just a really fun fact. This is me at age 13, 14 years old. This is my buddy Sage in the red shirt at age 13, 14 years old. Sage is now 6'6", and a half. So, one of the little pieces of videographic evidence, or photographic evidence, that I once was taller than Sage, because my balls dropped a little bit earlier. I have a fun follow-up with Sage later, but I can't really tell what... This looks like Dark Order over here, some Spartan remnants. I don't know what we're doing here. This might not be a faction battle, but anyway, it's a lot of people. This was 100+ people. And there was a couple-year period where melee would, maybe more than a couple of years, but a 50-person practice was a small to medium practice. 60, 70, 80 people was the high average for spring, summer, fall. Alright, next. Go to the next photo. Okay. Just another photo for melee. Just just talking about the scope of what's going on here. There's even some fighting going off over on this area of the screen that we can't see. And here we get to see a true melee legend, Matamushi, getting chased up the hill towards the Tree of Woe, as we called it, doing his best. Again, the plastic samurai armor, very common out there because it's light and flexible and 2 points. And again, it looks like there's Nate, there's Manly, and that looks like Sage right there. Way back. Yeah. Somebody brought out these matching, big maces, and we kept trying to use them. They weren't very good. Little bit of me being on the news. We got a chance to go on the news and do a fighting demo. Me and this fella here named Kale actually had a chance to fight each other. And we were trying to ham it up. And I threw a shot that I expected him to block, and he did not block it, and it hit him in the shoulder, and my ceremonial axe, that has almost no pommel on it, flew across the stage and almost hit a camera on live television, and yeah, there's video of it on the internet somewhere. I've literally never watched myself be on a morning talk show for foam fighting, because it's so embarrassing. This is a video of me as the line sergeant for Noble House Nuremberg, the heavy infantry unit I was talking about. I'm a line center. I'm not sure why we're stationed up like this, but this is one of my line anchors, a dude named Justin. He used to be one of my anchors, and I might do a series about foam fighting and like field strategy and line fighting and flanking. I really want to get into that at some point. More glamour shots of your boy. Um, yeah, just really like this photo. But that's about it for my background and who I am. I've just been doing this since 2003. I've had some moderate success. I've won a few local Dagger Here tournaments, like throughout my years. I've won a few Melee tournaments throughout my years. Placed okay, and even more. But nothing really to show an amp yet. Nothing to put on that permanent amp guard record. I was just starting to really care about getting back into this when I tore my ACL a few months ago, and I'm still dealing with issues with that. Me landing the highest of the high crosses. Just not even a high cross, just coming all the way over and stabbing the nerd. Once again, Melee guys like to grapple. A lot of them do. I think I was armed here or something. Just some photos of me fighting. A rare photo of me with short hair. Actually looks pretty good there. Got the little goatee shadow going on. Me and the boys. This is me and a couple of our freelancers back. So once Melee, we started, like, a few guys dribbled in, then we eventually convinced a few big personalities at Melee to come out and try out DAG, and then boom, we had like a 25 to 30 person unit going to every event in the Midwest that was like within 4 or 5 hours of us and tearing it up. Never really performing super well in the tournaments, but as far as field fights go, I think that we had one losing record for field fights across events that we've been to. Yeah. This is me in a little questing tournament at Dark Tides. So that photo from forever ago, big Melee, little Nate, little Sage. This is from 4 or 5 years ago. It's me when I was 27. Sage at 27. Look how big and handsome he is. And it's just like literally like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people from the freelances engaging one blue orc. Because that's teamwork, dream work. This is what I look like today. This is me at a DAG Day event, rocking my war shield and my half bat. Love this gear kit. I love having the like maneuverable shorter weapon with the 28-inch teardrop. It looks bigger than it actually is because I'm pushing it right at the camera. And this is what I want to look like again soon. Look at this heartthrob. Look at this handsome man. Yeah, this was me. I want to say this was 2017, 2018, 2019. I can't remember exactly when. Like 2017, 2018. I did a couch to 5K program, and I went from weighing about 350 pounds down to weighing in the high 270s, and you can just see how my garb is just falling off of me just about. Yeah. Also, just great photo. But yeah, nowadays I just now restarted trying to lose weight. I'm walking around at 385, 390, somewhere in there. I just like lost my job and got a new one again, so did some depression eating. I'm going to therapy to work on like binge eating disorders, things like that. I've been meal prepping, really trying to rehabilitate this right knee and stop injuring it. Partially tore my ACL like 3 months ago, and then last Saturday at practice, I had thought it had been getting better and better. I had fought on it for the 3 weeks previous to last Saturday. This would have been the 4th time I'd fought on it since recovering, thinking that I was recovered. And in the very second fight I was in, it tried to go out on me again. So I'm probably going to be off the fighting grind until October. I waited 2 months last time, and that wasn't long enough. I'm going to wait at least 3 months this time and go back to the doctor, get that checked out. But yeah, that's who I am if you're wondering who I am. If I haven't answered any questions you might have, just let me know. I like fighting sword and shield. I like sparring, tournaments, field fights, all that kind of thing. But have a good evening.